Hi everyone, welcome to the latest Liquidware Chats. In this episode, I talk to Andy Tynes, who's the VP of Worldwide Sales at Apporto. We talk about Andy's career in EUC, including his time at FSLogix. Andy also then talks about who are Apporto, what do they do? So we really get into what is Apporto are all about. Then we look at the partnership between Apporto and Liquidware. And as always, we finish with our look at the impact of AI on EUC. Really hope you enjoy the episode. Thanks.
James, I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good. It's a nice sunny day here in Dublin for a change, so I'm doing well. So yeah, it's all good.
It's sunny and mild here in North Florida as well.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. So Andy, just to get us started, obviously I've known you for a fair few years, but just for people who might be aware, can you give me some of your background in terms of end user computing?
Sure, happy to do that. So, I've been in technology sales for, well, let's just say a long, long time. But I got into um, the end user computing space about 10 years ago, when I joined FSLogix, which at the time was a very small startup based in Atlanta. Joined FSLogix to run sales there. Kevin Goodman, who was our CEO, I actually knew Kevin and his wife socially, actually, prior to joining FSLogix. I actually went to grade school with his wife, and that's kind of how we got to know each other. And then when he started FSLogix, and he got his B round of funding, he was at a point where it was time to invest in sales and marketing. And we were having lunch one day, and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this thing, and I've gotten to a point where I need someone to help me with sales, kind of build it out, really, from the ground up. Would you have an interest in that?" And I'm like, "Well, sure, let's talk about it." So we talked about it for a little bit, and it sounded very interesting, even though I didn't really know that much about the space. And he connected me with Brian Madden, who at the time was one of his early investors, and kind of Brian gave me his view, so I got to know Brian that way, and we were off and running. So FSLogix, I joined there in 2015, I think. And when I joined, I mean, we still only had like 7, 8 customers, so we were incredibly small. And we had just introduced our profile container at the time I joined, and then we already had the masking application as well. So those were kind of the two big offerings that we were selling. And then as we kind of got into it, and we kind of realized that we solved this challenge that Citrix and Horizon customers were facing when they moved to Office 365. Email was just performance kind of went down the tubes, and we were able to
It,
fix
it,
that.
it sucked. It sucked pretty
Yeah,
badly. Yeah.
it was really
Yeah,
bad.
it was bad. I was working as a solution architect back at that kind of time, and oh my god, was it trying to configure Outlook? It was just so bad.
Yeah, and at the time we didn't we didn't realize that we would essentially fix that, right? So it was kind of a surprise to us. But once we recognized it, we did additional research. We kind of really focused on that from a sales standpoint, and we were kind of off and running by the time Synergy came around in 2016.
That's an interesting time to kind of join the industry, and as you said, like FSLogix came to market when for that kind of niche of problems with Office on virtualized platforms.
Yes, so that was kind of our big focus. And as time went on, we started hearing from our friends at Microsoft because, and you remember this very well, I'm sure. Um, when a customer would move to Office 365, and all of a sudden everything email performance, kind of went to hell, right? Um, a lot of people, they had no idea what happened, right? So um, Citrix and VMware were like, well, it can't be us. What's changed is you moved to Office 365, so it's got to be a Microsoft problem. Microsoft would say, well, if for all those users that aren't running Citrix, works fine, so it must be your problem. So they were kind of pointing fingers at each other. Meanwhile, we came in. Liquidware also had a solution, and we just fixed the problem. And it was at that point when Scott Manchester and the folks at Microsoft started paying attention to FSLogix. Long story short, they acquired FSLogix in 2018. At that point, like I said, we had 8 customers when we started. We were up to like 1,300 customers at that point because we were doing very well, not only in the US, but also in the EMEA markets. And it was at that point when they acquired us in 2018. And because they needed that technology to essentially become the undercarriage of what's now Azure Virtual Desktop.
Yeah, of course. And as we know, Azure Virtual Desktop went through a lot of different names from was Windows Virtual Desktop for a long time, and now it's everyone knows it as AVD. Well, that's a really interesting journey. In terms of EUC, you've worked for a couple of other EUC vendors as well, haven't you? Before you ended up in your current role at Apporto.
I have, yeah. So I spent a year at Microsoft actually after the acquisition, because they, gave all of us a contract for either 6 months to a year. So I did that. I kind of helped Microsoft build out the original, what was then called Windows Virtual Desktop Global Black Belt team. And then at the end of that year, I was having a conversation with Jed Ayers, who was at the time over at iGel. And they needed, he was telling me that, I don't have a renewals organization. I haven't built out our renewals process. So far, sales has just been kind of managing it. And it's just kind of, it's rough waters and it doesn't go well. I need someone to come in and build out a renewals process, a renewals team, and kind of separate that from sales. Andy, I know you kind of did that. That's part of what you did at FSLogix, which I did. Do you think you could come over here and do it for iGel? I was like, sure. So I came over to iGel, spent close to a couple of years over there, kind of built the renewals team for him. Then I kind of took on the customer care team. So did that for a couple of years. And from there, I went to Remo 3, which I think most of us know out there. It's provides automated application testing, which is a big need right now as a lot of organizations are moving from Windows 10 to Windows 11 and also moving to the cloud. So that's where kind of Remo 3 comes into play. So I spent some time there and then came to Apporto in April of this year. So I'm still pretty new here at Apporto. Came to Apporto in April, and how that came about was, again, back to Kevin Goodman, who was running the Workspaces team over at AWS. He was having a conversation with Anthony Ueda, my boss and the CEO of Apporto. And Anthony had kind of gotten to the point where Apporto had grown up to be a pretty big organization. When I joined in April, at that time, Apporto was approaching 250 customers. And up until then, Anthony had been running the company and running sales, but he'd gotten to a point where he needed some help running sales. And he was talking to Kevin and like, hey, I need a VP of sales. Do you have any ideas? And Kevin said, well, you could talk to the guy who ran sales for me. So that's how I got introduced to Apporto. Again, was through Kevin. And Anthony and I started having discussions and, we kind of hit it off. And so here I am 6 months later. Now we have north of 300 customers. And I think, as you noted, Apporto has been around about 10 years, and the focus has been on kind of the higher ed vertical, but now things are starting to change.
Okay, that's really interesting. So let's talk about Apporto. If you were to describe it, how would you describe it as a solution?
So the easiest and kind of shortest way to describe Apporto is that we're essentially a next generation VDI platform. And we were designed really kind of from the ground up for the cloud, and that our main advantage, we believe, is that we're able to strip out complexity and cost and ownership because we have a very simple and straightforward admin console, and we can deliver a near native user experience to any browser enabled device. So no client. We have our own delivery protocol, which helps us deliver that world-class performance, and an easy-to-use platform and or admin console. So those are kind of the 3 things that get people's attention. And as we've seen, I know we've all seen this firsthand, the market's changing dramatically. since the legacy guys, Citrix and VMware, they've gone through a lot of change, and private equity's kind of come in and made changes with those two organizations and their offerings. And as a result, um, as I said, the focus has been higher ed, and we've created some very interesting functionality that's unique and specific to higher ed. And it's why we've done so well there. And that's what Anthony did in the beginning, was he just kind of spent time with some of the universities on the West Coast and asked them, what were some of the challenges they were facing. And that's how the solution came to what it is, and some of the functionality that we provide, things like virtual classrooms, cybersecurity labs, et cetera, that nobody else really has. So that's why we've done so well in that market, is we have very unique functionality that is incredibly appealing to that higher ed marketplace.
And obviously, you're cloud companies. So in terms of that, are you multi-cloud in terms of your infrastructure, or is it one specific cloud, or is it what kind of way does that work? I presume you have like control planes across the world and that kind of thing, or
Great question. And yes, multi-cloud, and that's another good point. So we've always been a hosted solution. Okay, so for the higher ed market, it's been a cloud offering, which has been very appealing to that market, because so many of those schools, they don't have VDI expertise internally. So that's another reason why we've been able to pick up a lot of customers. And for that hosted offering, we leverage both AWS and Azure, depending upon where that customer is and what the use case is. We'll leverage both of them and figure out what works best. Now, earlier in the year, we've re-architected the platform so we can now run on-prem or hybrid, where we can have the console on the cloud, but everything else can kind of sit on-prem, and we can leverage that client's cloud tenant, whether it's, and again, we focus on just Azure or AWS, if that's their preference. What we're seeing, though, at least what I've seen so far in that market, is there's still a lot of organizations that really want to look. We just want to run on-prem. This is what we've been doing for for
yeah.
years. We have security reasons that we want to do it this way. We just want to stay on-prem. So that's kind of, we've seen a lot of activity and interest in that area since we started marketing, and that's exactly what we've done to the other markets outside of higher ed. And it started because those companies were coming to us saying, "Hey, I need to look at some alternatives. Things are changing with Citrix or Horizon, and we want to just kind of see what else is out there in the market."
Yeah, I think you raised a good point there, Andy, around, and we're seeing it more and more, is companies are looking for hybrid. They don't want to have all their eggs in the cloud basket. They want to have some of their workloads potentially on-prem and some in cloud, and kind of have it, be able to pick and choose where they put those workloads. So it's definitely a key factor for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Some workloads are a great fit for the clouds. Others aren't such a great fit for the cloud, or at least that's what that's what customers tell us. So, like Liquidware, we want to have that flexibility to allow the customer to choose the best path for them.
Agreed. Yeah, yeah, and that's I think that's one of the things we say. We're completely platform agnostic. You can run it wherever you want, basically, and we don't care. So you choose as a customer where you want to run it, and away you go. That's not something we get into or really care about. It's not a focus for us, because we want to be, as you said, a little bit. We want to be flexible and be able to support customers wherever they feel their requirements are. So yeah, that's a good trait. So in terms of the Apporto platform, how do you handle things like performance and scalability? Obviously you leverage cloud, so you're able to scale, but how do you handle monitoring of your workloads and that kind of thing? Do you have native tools or third party solutions, or what do you utilize?
So on the performance front, we've kind of we built our own delivery protocol that we call Hyperstream. And
Mm.
what we're doing is we're converting RDP to HTML5 using our own compression technology. And so we use that video compression essentially to optimize for low bandwidth and high performance. And we're able to
Yep.
deliver 60 frames a second without a hardware requirement. So that's what we're doing on the, on the performance front. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then in terms of monitoring, that's something we're still sort of building out on our own right now. What we find is that it's best to just leverage the tools that the customer already has in place. So
That makes sense.
like
Yeah.
what that Liquidware brings to the table, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that's in the roadmap that we may build some kind of fundamental monitoring capabilities a little bit down the road, but we haven't done that yet just because we know so many, the majority of the customers already have something in place that's
Yeah,
doing.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. And why would you go reinventing the wheel when you can just utilize something that's already in place and the customer is already comfortable with whatever solution they're utilizing? That makes total sense. And just if you integrate it to what you're doing, then there's no learning process for the customer. Again, it's that whole message of simplicity that you were talking about earlier.
Exactly. And that's something else, just to be clear in terms of in this outside of higher ed, which by the way is it can be a pretty complex environment, right? Because they've got, literally thousands and thousands of students that don't need to access all the time. They've got hundreds of applications because these schools are teaching a variety of different classes and things to their students. So the ability to support hundreds of applications and different delivery methodologies for the students, which is why we've kind of focused on the browser so they could access
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
from anywhere, has been a key reason for our success, I think, in that marketplace.
Yeah, speaking as someone who has worked on higher ed projects, I'm well aware of the complexity involved and the demands, and the amount of applications is unreal, and the different use cases. So to simplify it down to be able to essentially access those environments from anywhere via browser is a really good selling point, because it just means you don't have to provide hardware to students. They can just utilize their own laptop and log in. There's no agent on their device, so they don't care about, you're not looking at what they're doing locally or anything. It's a browser tab, and when they're finished they close the browser tab. So yeah, I we're seeing this obviously more and more, that more we're moving towards, everything's done via a browser or an app. If we even look at like where Microsoft are going, they launched their Windows app across, every platform conceivable I think last week. You can
Right.
get it on your Android phone, your iPhone, your LG, your TV, whatever. It doesn't matter. So I think we're seeing that more and more. As I said, we've talked about where your workloads is being hybrid, but where we are is hybrid as well, and what device we're utilizing is hybrid. Like I'm currently on a laptop, but in half an hour could be on my phone, or that kind of thing. So I think having that flexibility, as you said, is a really good thing for companies who are providing like virtual desktops.
Yeah, and I think we all saw that, when the pandemic happened a few years back, all of a sudden everybody was forced to go remote. And even though we are starting to see organizations pull their employees, back into the office, um, it's never going to go back to the way it was, right? Users are going to be remote moving forward, and they're going to not just require, but demand the ability to access um, content from a variety of devices and from a variety of locations. So we and all the vendors in this community, we have to be able to provide that type of access, flexibility, and simplicity that the users demand, because they're going to demand it of their organizations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because if if we think back to where we were, say 10 years ago with VDI, you got a locked down desktop with your required work apps, and you couldn't do anything, you couldn't customize it, you could only access it from certain devices via, sometimes even via VPNs and all this. And whereas now it's just like, as we said, you open a browser and away you go, enter your credentials, and you're in, up and running. And because of those different form factors, it has to be simple, because, if you're on a phone, you don't want to be, I remember back in the day trying to do all sorts of things logged in via my phone, and I had to resize the screen and all that kind of thing. Whereas now it's all auto done, so it knows what device it's on and it reacts according to the device you're on. So I think that's a huge difference in how kind of desktops are accessed.
Yeah, it's amazing how far we've come in just a few years. I mean, I remember the first time, I probably got on a Zoom call, which wasn't that long ago, right? And I'm thinking, this isn't going to work. This video thing that they're talking about, is this really going to work for an entire 60-minute call? I doubt it, but here we are. And now we expect it to work all the time, and when it doesn't, we're surprised and a little irritated.
Exactly. So just thinking about where we are in EUC and in the context of Apporto, what's kind of your next big thing you guys are looking at, if you can talk about it?
Well, I think, for us, what we're focused on right now, because we've re-architected that platform, right? So that we can run on-prem, hybrid. It's the message to the customer is, um, whatever works best for you for each individual and unique workload. So right now because it is kind of a newer market from us, that commercial marketplace, we're kind of focused on what do we need to do? Are there things we need to do that are different than what we've been doing, which is serving that higher ed community? So we're kind of focused on that right now. And as far as that market opportunity goes, I think our primary focus is going to be, for the most part, on the SMB mid-size marketplace. I mean, there are literally, as we know, thousands and thousands of customers out there that have been running on Citrix or Horizon for years, right? And because of the direction those two vendors have taken, and they've made it very clear, I don't think I'm bad mouthing them so much. They've come out and said our focus is going to be on our largest customers. We want to make sure that that's where they're our bread and butter. We're going to take care of them. And the smaller customers, you want to stay with us, that's great. But if you don't, the prices are going up. So that's kind of up to you. And so a lot of those customers are frustrated and annoyed, and they're looking at alternatives. So we want to kind of be one of those options that they seriously consider. And we think we have a very bright future just by focusing on, because it's a huge market. And there's what we're seeing, and I'm sure you've seen the same thing, just so many organizations out there that are looking for, different ways to do this.
Speaking of the market, I noticed that you guys are in the latest Gartner MQ for desktop as a service. So congratulations on that.
Yes, thanks very much. That was we were very pleased to see that. We were in the last one as well, but we have kind of moved up, so we're continuing to move up and to the right. So we're very pleased about that. We want to continue to focus on the offering and the market, so that it's our belief that we'll continue to journey upward and to the right in that quadrant. But we were very pleased to see that from Gartner, that they moved us up. And it's always gratifying to when the so-called experts and analysts out there, when they take a look at your solution and and they view it favorably.
Yeah, absolutely. Recognition is a good thing. So, yeah,
Never a bad thing.
yeah, and you're up against some behemoths. Let's not pull any punches. Like, if you look at that other quadrant, you've got the Microsofts, you've got Citrix, you've got now Omnissa. So as you said, you're kind of newish to this space. I know you've been doing desktops in the higher ed sector, but to get to kind of force even to appear in that kind of sector is a huge achievement, in my opinion.
Well, and one of our messages to organizations who do decide to give us a look is that yes, those the big guys are out there. They do this for a lot of organizations, but so do we. We now have we're obviously we're not as big as them, but we have 300 customers, and our focus is we're very focused on ensuring that we take care of the customer and ensure their success. So customer service is, at the top of our priority list, and that's one of the things that we'll really hammer on when we're talking to an organization that is considering us. Is that listen, we're a smaller vendor, and we have the time and the attention that we can focus just on you to ensure your success.
Absolutely, and that would be a similar message, with what we would say, and from a liquidware perspective. So one of the things we started doing some work together ourselves, because obviously it's great having a desktop, unless you have applications, it's not you're not really providing anything. So I know we've been doing some work about using Apporto to deliver Flex apps, and again, it goes back to that whole message of simplicity, and because of the way our applications are so dynamic, and you have your small base image. The applications are there on demand, or when you can set when they are available and that kind of thing. So again, it's kind of simplicity and flexibility, and it kind of goes. It's a good synergy, I think, with your own with the Apporto platform.
I think you'll appreciate this, James. When I joined in April, one of the things I talked about with Anthony was, I know we're very well known in the higher ed market, in that vertical. Apporto is a very well known name, but outside of that, not so much. So that's one of the challenge. It's one of the things we're very focused on is building our awareness level. And one of the first suggestions I had was, hey, let's go to IGEL Disrupt, because that'll give us an opportunity to see all the other key vendors in the space, as well as give us exposure to lots and lots of customers that already have a Citrix or a VMware or some other solution. But once there, one of the first people I wanted to find was Jason Smith from Liquidware, because I knew one of the things we wanted to be able to do goes back to flexibility and simplicity, was ensure that we find a way to work with Liquidware, and make sure that we have a strong joint message. And so right out of the gates, that was April, and now here we are today, where we've done some testing, as you've described. Liquidware makes the integration between Apporto and the Flex app platform pretty easy. I mean, a user can launch a Flex app package by navigating to the URL where the packages are available. It could be an internal website, a corporate app store, or even our app store, and they're off and running. They can download that package, no other installation steps required, and then just launch it, and they're off and running. So that's something that's, as you noted, we've done the testing. We now have a strong joint message, which again gives customers, that flexibility, the options to manage their applications in different ways.
Absolutely, and I think, as you said, we've had changes with certain vendors and that kind of thing, and I think from a customer perspective, having that kind of joint partnership messaging, it makes it easier for the customer to then choose, because they go, okay, well then I have like this total package, as I don't have to go off and find a vendor for this and a vendor for that. I know these two work well together. They've got an integration. So I think having that joint messaging really helps the customers as well, because they go, okay, yeah, those two work well together, so I can just go with that solution. And then we back it up with the documentation and the solution briefs and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think it, rather than just having that kind of joint message, I think it makes a difference.
It really does, because if you think about it, and I know you guys are fully aware of this, when a customer is looking at, some type of new solution, they're always looking at they're trying to manage risk, right? It's like, okay, number one, if I look at this new thing, is it going to solve my problem? Okay, looks like it does. Number two, is it going to work? And is it going to work with the other things I already have in my environment? And when vendors like us can go to organizations with that joint message and show them that, hey, we've already done that work to ensure you'll know and that you're comfortable that if you decide that it makes sense to deploy a liquidware solution and an Apporto solution in your environment, you're going to have that comfort level that they're going to work together. And that means a lot to them, right? Because the last thing they want to do is get into something that, and find out, well, it didn't work so well, and then they're in trouble.
Yeah, and as you say, most organizations will be risk adverse. So if we
Yeah.
can mitigate those risks for companies, then that gives them the reassurance to go, okay, yeah, I can go with both these guys. There's not going to be any issues. Obviously, it's 2024, but we're still talking about applications and management and all that kind of thing. And one thing I will say, Flex App very much helps in that, in terms of its compatibility with the majority of applications, but also just the simplicity of it. Like, there's no complicated infrastructure with Flex App.
Exactly. Um, and I know Intune or SCCM can also be leveraged for distribution if
Yep.
that's an organization's preferred methodology. So again, it's about simplicity and flexibility, and that's what the customers want, and that's what they need. They got enough to worry about. So the last thing they want to do is worry about, is this going to work or is it not? And the more those of us in the ecosystem can partner and work together, um, it's better for all of us. It's better for us, and it's better for the customers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, is there any kind of key EUC trends that you're looking at and kind of thinking where Apporto fits going forward? Like, is there anything you're thinking, oh yeah, that's gonna have an impact on us, or that's something we can leverage? Is there anything like that you can think of?
One of the things that we've been trying to do some analysis internally is, as I mentioned earlier, we've got some pretty interesting functionality that we've built for the higher ed market around, virtual classrooms, cybersecurity labs, which provides kind of an air-gapped sandbox environment.
Yep.
One of the things we're doing is trying to figure out this functionality that we've built and has been used for years. Is there a place for it in the corporate marketplace? And so one example is, we've had a couple of customers just in the last few months bring a Porto in for their training organizations, right? Because they're looking for methodologies and platforms to find ways to do training easier with more flexibility. They're bringing in new employees that, in a lot of cases, or contractors, for example, that could be in a variety of locations around the world, giving them the flexibility to deliver product training or process training that they need to do for their employees, or a contractor, could be someone that's even short term. We give them that flexibility. So that's been that could be a potentially interesting market for us moving forward.
Just in that, I presume like scaling up and scaling down on a Porto is a pretty simple thing to do as a customer.
It is. It's very easy, very straightforward. Again, having that we don't have, there's no client or no agent at this stage, right? Makes it a lot easier, makes things move a lot faster. The user just has to use their browser to access things. And so scale up, scale down, we make that pretty easy.
That's good. And then what about like in terms of, you spoke of some of the different use cases there, customization of the desktop. Is that through your admin console that's achieved?
Yes, yes, it is. So, and the admin console, interestingly enough, is also accessed via browser. So no client required there either. So again, we're just trying to find ways to make it as easy as possible for those customers to manage their environment, no matter where they're located.
Yeah, no, that I think that's something we're very much seeing. Like if we look at our latest solution, we launched command control SaaS based console is in the cloud. You don't need a client or anything. You simply log in and then you have access to everything. So I've done I did a blog post recently and I had a picture of a guy sitting on the beach with his laptop and his screen open and he's running our command control solution because it is browser based. You don't have any requirement for a VPN, anything like that. You can just access it via a browser anywhere in the world.
You can't beat that. I mean, that's what the customers want. That's what their users require. And it keeps our customers moving forward.
Okay. So just to kind of start to wrap things up a little bit, one of the key areas, and we haven't actually mentioned the word, but is obviously AI. So are Apporto looking at ways that AI can help them? Obviously, I've even though external to where I run an AI podcast, but even I am getting a little bit fatigued by hearing everything is AI enabled. Like I give an example, an AI powered washing machine. AI for AI's sake is not something I want to see. So I presume Apporto have taken a very pragmatic view and in how you're looking at AI.
Yeah, yes, that's a great it's a great point. And you're right. We are taking a pragmatic view. You won't find on our website anywhere that, that Apporto is leveraging AI to do, this or that or whatever. We're studying it and we are looking at ways we can leverage AI in our platform. And but it comes back to, can we make things better, faster, easier for our customers, for their users? How can we leverage AI to do exactly that? And as we've seen, it's changing so fast, and
Mm.
it's still pretty early days, right, for artificial intelligence. So I think we're all going to
Oh, yeah.
continue to see things change so rapidly. So to suggest today that, oh well, we're gonna leverage AI in this way and it's gonna do X, and boy, we're gonna solve the world's problems. It's 90 days from now, AI, what we're seeing from AI could change so fast that that could be, we could be going down a very
Yeah.
different path.
Yeah. And I also think when it comes to AI, like, if you think about AI and you said, say, manage these desktops in the most efficient manner, probably kick all the users off because that's the most efficient manner. If you didn't kind of put those guide rails around it. So I am very much of the opinion in EUC, if it comes to if you want an AI to kind of maybe make recommendations, that's fine. But I always at the moment I still want a human interaction where it's say, okay, if you resize this machine, you could be more efficient. Would you like to do that? Not it goes and does it, and then you actually find there was a reason the person had the machine running that size. And that brings up another thing. I presume you have different specs of machines for different use cases.
We do. Yes, that's a great point. We've had to do that on, again, for higher ed, right? Where
Yeah.
on that, when we're providing that hosted solution, right? Having the ability, it's like, well, what are the apps that you need to run? And we've done this long enough so that we know what we'll label small, medium, large, or even GPU. What type of power does that user require to run, whatever application that they need to run? So we have a lot of different flexibility to address the unique users' needs that they have. And that's so again, we've learned that on the higher ed side of things because there's so much flexibility that they have to have for the different types of classes and users that they have, the different things they're teaching. So we've been doing that for years. So in the corporate markets, being able to, we can tell them with confidence what they're going to need, um, just from a power standpoint for those users based on the applications that they're running.
Yeah, and then as I said, I worked on higher ed projects in the past, and they were highly demanding users, and obviously corporate users are highly demanding as well. So I think the transition from one industry or one vertical to the other is not going to be that difficult for yourselves as a platform, because you were dealing with very demanding users, and you're going to be continuing to deal with those. So I think the transition should be fine. As you said, it's about getting that awareness and your name out there, and I think that's what it takes.
Yeah, that's right. And we do, it does come back to just having that flexibility. And because we've been running on the cloud for, 10 plus years now, our one of the messages that we're delivering to prospective customers in whether it's higher ed or not higher ed is like, look, you've been running on-prem for a long time. You want to continue to run on-prem with us, that's great. But if you find that it makes more sense for that use case or that workload or for those group of users to move to the cloud, we can do that for you. And in the transition will be very easy and straightforward and transparent to the users. So that's a compelling message that seems to resonate well.
Yeah, that I completely get that. That makes total sense to me, because as I said, you've got different types of use cases that you're looking to meet the requirements of. Any so we've looked pretty much at everything, I think, from an Apporto perspective. What do you think the future holds for Apporto? What's next?
So we are right now, I'm very focused on growing my team, the organization. I think I mentioned this earlier. We are in the EMEA market, so we have a director in EMEA, and he's been in place for, gosh, not quite 2 years, maybe 20 months. And in that 20-month period, we already have 20 customers. I think it's like now we're up to 22 customers in the UK and Ireland that are all higher ed, right? And we've now added a customer success manager over there. I have a new sales manager, sales rep starting next week, actually, and he's going to be focused more on that corporate enterprise side of the market. I'm adding reps here in the US as well, building out both the higher ed team and the enterprise team. So right now we're focused on growing our team to ensure we're able to service our customers and prospects in the right way. And while on the product side, while they're continuing to get feedback from prospects and customers to ensure that what we're bringing to the table is going to meet the needs of their users.
Excellent. Well, it sounds like it's all going in the right direction. So just remains for me to say, Andy, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
James, it has been a pleasure. It was great seeing you over in Munich at Disrupt over there. That's one of the things I love about this community, the EUC community, is that so many of us have kind of, once we get into the space, we kind of stay here, right? And we've
Yeah.
all known each other for years, and it's just a lot of fun when I go to events and I get to see people that I've known for years, and maybe sometimes our shirt has a different name on it, but we're all here in the same community, and it's just a blast. I'm so happy that I've been a part of this community for the last 9 to 10 years because it's just a great community of people.
Excellent. Andy, thank you very much. Hope everyone enjoys the episode, and see you on the next one. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Thanks, everybody.